All right, Lisa, you are good.
All right. Thank you, Maddie. Whoops. Now I need to click. This is being recorded. Okay. So today we're welcoming Dr. Jillian Bybee, MD, FAAP, and she is a I'm sorry, I didn't ask your pronouns. Oh, she, her, hers, you put them there. She's a pediatrician, pediatric intensivist, medical educator, coach, writer, speaker, and advocate. At Corewell Health West and Michigan State University, she serves as the Director of Wellness for Graduate Medical Education and Associate Program Director of Wellbeing and Professional Development for the Pediatric Residency Program and Pediatric Critical Care Medicine Fellowship Program. That is a lot to say. She dedicates her work in medical education, quality improvement, and patient safety and well-being to preventing or lessening the morbidities associated with the medical system on patients, families, and fellow healthcare workers. Having navigated recovery from burnout herself, Dr. Bybee emphasizes the importance of healthcare worker well-being by linking current data and personal stories as a physician, navigating the intersection of work, home, community, and self. She has delivered numerous sessions nationally on healthcare worker well-being, including stress management, secondary traumatic stress, burnout, and resilience, which have positively impacted hundreds of healthcare workers. And I will hand it over with thanks to Dr. Bybee.
Great. Thank you for that. I'm going to try to get my screen shared. Here we go. All right. So it's always interesting listening to your bio that someone reads about you because, uh, it's such an interesting way to think about yourself. But that was some information about me. One of the things that's not in my bio is that I love reading. I love books. Libraries have been my home for a long time since I was younger, and they continue to be my home as now a physician working in a big healthcare organization where I can't possibly find everything that I. So I was really excited for this opportunity to be here with you all, and also hopefully, leave you with some things to think about. We'll have time for questions. You can go ahead and put things in the chat. Sometimes I lose track of the chat as I'm talking, but we'll definitely come around to things at the end. So today I'm talking about active stress management. Really, that is a term that I made up. I hadn't heard it anywhere else. And now, if you start to Google it, you'll probably find things that I've written, even though my search optimization is not perfect. So it probably won't come up in Google as easily as it might someday. The objectives for this session are really to talk about burnout a little bit and then really understand all of our understandings of stress. We'll talk about what that practice of active stress management is, some of its components, and then we'll really contrast it with some of the traditional self-care that the wellness industrial complex tries to sell us as self-care. And then we will also identify some practical strategies. And this is really where we'll spend the bulk of today. You will learn a lot of possible strategies that you could incorporate into your toolbox, but by no means is this an exhaustive list. And by no means will all of these things work for all of you. If this is something that you're new to, it will take some trial and error, but really, these are the pathways to lessen your stress, experience more fulfillment and joy. And they're really the things that I've learned over the last period of years, which I'll talk about in a minute, that have helped me and helped those hundreds of other people that I've gone to talk to. So you got to hear about my bio. So I'm a pediatric critical care medicine physician, which means I have a really low stress job where I work in the pediatric ICU, taking care of the sickest children in the hospital. I'm the team leader in that situation, so I work with a lot of amazing people, and all of those amazing people have a role to play to help me do my job the best I can possibly do. Um, Clearly, if you haven't noticed, I'm all right. I'm a sarcastic person. My job is not low stress. Stress is something that helps me get through my job, and it's really I've had to adapt my mindset about stress in general, and that's something we'll talk about in a little bit. I'm a formal educator now. I'm also a wellness leader with some wellness director titles in my organization. I have recovering perfectionism tendencies, like a lot of people who go into helping professions. And then I do a lot of other things. And really, those other things are important to me, but nothing as important as the bottom, which is the wife to a great partner, mom to a 2.5-year-old who's like the light of my life and hilarious. And then I have an 85-pound pit bull mix who likes to think she's a baby, but is not. Oh, I love what's happening in the chat here. Other people enjoying sarcasm as well. Perfect. I found my place. All right, so a little bit about my career path. As I mentioned, I'm a recovering perfectionist, and as you can see on the left side of the screen, back in 2010, I started my journey outside of medical education. So I graduated from medical school and started to do this thing called doctoring, and I continued the process of getting gold stars and checking boxes. And so that got me to a really good training program for PICU, or Pediatric Critical Care Medicine Fellowship, from 2013 to 2017, where I signed on to continue to get the check boxes. And then I kept shoving down all the stressful experiences I was having. And unfortunately, that led to the little red circle that you can see there, which was my experience the first time with burnout and my experience with a major depressive episode. I spent most of my 2017 year, which was my research year, recovering from said burnout and depression. And then I got this job that I'm currently at, which is at Helen DeVos Children's Hospital in Grand Rapids, Michigan. It's a wonderful place to be. But not being from here, I thought I always would move back to the West Coast, where I'm originally from. But from 2017 to 2020, really what happened was I thought I would have left all those things that I experienced in my fellowship in the past. I thought that I would be able to move on, but really what I did was continue to do all the behaviors that got me into burnout and depression in the first place. And in 2020, I actually experienced another burnout episode. I was looking for new positions because the traditional teaching is that if you run away from the place you are, it must be the place, and it's clearly not about you. And what I had to learn was that I had a lot of things that I was doing that contributed to my early career burnout, and that I was not alone in this. Most of the people who are physicians in their attending careers, so meaning after training careers, a lot of the people who experience burnout are early career physicians, and that's because we don't learn a lot of these like adulting life skills that we need. And we come into the job with a lot of things. And for me, that included an imposter phenomenon, which also some people call imposter syndrome. I didn't really understand my own values or my purpose other than to be someone helping other people. I didn't have any boundaries because I was trying to check a lot of boxes and continue to accumulate gold stars. And then I had no self-care practices because I think no matter who you are in the world, but certainly someone who grew up identifying as a woman and in my own family of origin, I was taught to care for other people and not really taught to care for myself. And I had to learn how to do that. Now I teach other people how to do it in order to help me stay well. And that's really what this talk is. It's all about the post-traumatic growth that I've experienced after my own experience with burnout and depression. And then it's really looking at how do I take this job that I love, this work that I love, that is high stress, is challenging at times, incorporate it in my life and not get spit out the other side as a person who can't do anything. I had to figure out what my own values were, what my own joy looked like. And that's really something that I help other people do now. And this has not been a process that happened in one day or 1 month. This has been a years-long process. And I joke that I continue to practice this out loud for other people so that they can hopefully learn from the things that I've learned the hard way. And that's what I'm here for you to do today, hopefully to gain something, at least one insight about yourself and what might be helpful for you. These are the messages when I go out and talk and just interact within my organization that I hear more. People are trying to do more with less. People think they need to be everything to everyone, which I learned was impossible. Most of us are feeling pulled in too many different directions between our professional and our personal lives. And then I think a lot of people are feeling like there aren't enough hours in the day, really related to the time pressure that builds, especially when we're not caring for ourselves. I think thinking about, knowledge in general, like you and I are working in a time of rapidly expanding knowledge. I think we all know that medical knowledge itself is exploding, and that this data is now outdated, but this was from a few years ago saying that medical knowledge will double every 73 days by 2020. And that by 2025, the compound annual growth rate for data in healthcare will reach 36%. And that, if you take it by itself, can be really overwhelming. I think some people And I used to be one of these people. I feel like you have to know everything. You have to be able to do everything. You have to be able to anticipate every technological disturbance, as we were talking about at the beginning of this. And unfortunately, those are the cultural messages that we get. But these are really unhelpful things that we incorporate into ourselves that can lead to us not taking care of ourselves the way that we need to be. The other thing that happens, and what might be some potential burnout drivers for you, particularly working your spaces, is you might have staffing constraints. You might have vacant positions, or maybe you're only one person working in your area. And so, depending on how many people you have working on something at any given time, just like in my job, if there isn't somebody in the team who's normally there, the job requires more of all of us, and it means that we are stretched thinner than we usually would be. I think no matter where you work, whether it's clinical, non-clinical, we have budget constraints, resource constraints. We also have new technologies that are coming out all the time. Sometimes we can feel siloed from other people and disconnected, either within our own spaces or between other places in our organization. And then some of these things really contribute to a culture where we don't feel like we fit. Maybe we don't feel connected to it. Maybe the values are out of line with ours. And these things all lead to stress. And stress, as we'll talk about in a few minutes, are really the things that lead to burnout. I want to make one caveat before we really get digging into these practices. Though we will talk about meditation. I'm someone who meditates and have found that helpful, but it's really important for me to acknowledge that you can't meditate out of your way out of a 40-hour work week with no childcare. And this is something that comes from Dr. Pooja Lakshman, who wrote the book Real Self-Care last year. She's a clinical psychiatrist. And I thought this was both funny and true in that there are a lot of ways that our society doesn't support us to be able to do things that we need to do as professionals. We don't necessarily have the same help in place as other places in the world. And that meditation itself, or yoga, or vacation, or any of the things that we'll talk about, they don't by themselves fix the problem, but they can be the things that help us get through our days feeling less exhausted and less stressed out. And so instead of just burnout or well-being, I really like to think about quality of life. There's a professional quality of life model for healthcare, which I think is applicable for pretty much anybody. And really all quality of life is a balance of satisfaction or good things, and then the fatiguing things or the hard things about the jobs that we do. So as I mentioned, satisfaction at work and in our lives is really just the good things. So for me, that's showing up, taking care of patients, making connections with coworkers, leading sessions like this, where I can transmit knowledge to other people, and then the support that I feel. So good things plus support leads to satisfaction. And we'll talk about some ways at the end of this presentation to boost this. And then really our fatigue at work, I think for the purposes of this talk, to really distill it down, is the fatiguing thing can be stress, which can lead to chronic stress, and chronic stress can lead to burnout. I will very briefly talk about burnout, but it's really important to know that there's now like 50,000 publications, both peer-reviewed and not, about burnout, and there's greater than 146 definitions of burnout. So I've really chosen two, one that's sort of scientific and one that speaks to me as my definitions, but you could spend all day really debating what burnout is. And so that's why instead of focusing on burnout, I really try to think of what is quality of life, what is fulfillment, and how do we get at that? Because I think otherwise you can get really lost in the semantics, or that is burnout, that's not burnout, whatever. So as far as this talk goes, burnout really is a chronic occupational distress. And it was previously described for people who work outside of the home, but it certainly can be recognized for people who also do the labor inside of their home as a syndrome or a constellation of symptoms that are emotional exhaustion, feelings of disconnection, and then maybe career dissatisfaction, or really feeling that you're not good at your job. You don't have to have all three of these things, but just one is enough to feel like you have burnout. But the reason I don't love this definition is because people can debate, do I have enough emotional exhaustion? Do I have enough disconnection? There's a bunch of different tools I can take. One says I'm burnout, the other one doesn't. And I think really for the purposes of life and recovery, it doesn't matter whether you do that on a scale or not. And that's really why I like the Duke definition of burnout, which is just the impaired ability to experience positive emotion. So it's you are feeling frustrated, disconnected, you're not seeing the benefits of things, and it's maybe not the hopelessness that I felt when I had depression, but it's certainly feeling like you can't come to work and be positive, or you can't be in your life positive. You just don't see the benefit of, trying. What's the point? And for me, this took a while for me to get out of. And now I see those things, that sort of disconnection or the frustration, those things for me now are warning signals. So I've never gotten to the point that I did in 2020 again, but I certainly have periods where I'm more stressed and feel a little grouchier. Maybe the sarcasm's less humorous and more biting. And those are times when I have to check myself and say, oh, possibly I'm not attending to my needs in the way they need to be attended to. What can I do in order to do that? And that's really why I like to think about stress and not just burnout, because one of the biggest contributors to the development of burnout is chronic stress that you haven't managed or that hasn't been managed because you've been just trying to do your life. And it's really helpful as we think about stress to differentiate stressors on one hand from stress. So a stressor is a thing that triggers stress. That can be anything that you see, smell, touch, taste, or even something that you imagine. So if you're somebody who used to be like me, says, I'm not a good public speaker, or I hate public speaking. That thought, I hate public speaking, is likely to trigger stress, which is just the biochemistry or all the chemicals in your body, a cascade of signals that make your body feel that sense. So have a thought, have this cascade of chemicals, and in a perfect world where we weren't experiencing earthquakes and natural disasters and war and political upheaval and bias and like insert number of very challenging real difficulties. In a world that didn't have those things, we might be in this space where that biochemical process might last 90 seconds inside of us. It would say, oop, stress, things would happen inside of your body, and then it would calm down and you'd go along your day. I think what we all know now, especially since the pandemic started, but even prior to that, was that the world was changing and that our access to information about the world is changing, and that those two things together make us feel like we're in a chronic state of stress because we have access to all this information that our bodies were not programmed to get, because that's not evolutionarily the way our bodies were designed. The way our body's designed is have two parts of your nervous system. You have the sympathetic part, which is the stress part. That's the thing that if you were an animal and you were getting chased by a lion, it would say, oh, flee, and it would activate you to get to safety. Then there would come the period of rest from your parasympathetic nervous system. That's really the part that lets you rest and digest. It lets you produce a state of calm. It produces renewal. And the problem now is that more people are living in the activated or sympathetic portion of the nervous system. They're getting less of this rest. And that's really leading to feeling like we're hyped up all the time. Another way to think about this is these two parts of the nervous system as the volume dials. So the sympathetic is like turning the volume way up. The parasympathetic is like turning the volume down. And a lot of us are living in this chronic space where we're chronically turned up. And that's what leads to a lot of the health symptoms, a lot of other things, and eventually what leads to burnout. There's a life cycle to this chronic stress that's happening. So if you take a stressor, so say you're going to drive into work because you work on site and some stressor occurs, like someone cuts you off. Your stress cycle gets activated because your body detects that it's under threat. And so you have these chemicals going around in your body. Then somebody calls you. You've just been cut off. Somebody calls you on the phone, answer. It's your child's daycare. They're sick. So you have to figure out, am I going to go to work? Do I have a partner I can rely on? Is there an alternate childcare that I can have? You have all these other competing demands that have now gotten in the way of you processing the fact that you just got cut off and you thought your life was going to end. So you get stuck in this stress cycle because you've been reactivated. And at some point during your day, you experience a fight. And that's often the way that I experience it, is in sort of aggressive energy. Some people are more likely to be avoidant. Some people freeze, and then they blame themselves for it. And that's really the fact your body's like, nope, can't do it anymore. Unsafe, whoop, stop. And then whichever way that you respond, you feel guilty about it. So you've had this activated stress, you have something else that activates you, it gets in the way of your processing. You don't spend that 90 seconds to get back to baseline. You now are feeling guilty, so your brain is creating a bunch of thoughts that make you think about things. And then you don't sleep well, or you don't do things that are good for you, things that you want to do. You do escaping behaviors. And that's certainly something that a lot of us do. And that can lead to wear and tear on our body. That can keep us in the cycle of stress over time. And that's really the thing as we think about all the things that we're carrying. And certainly you carry any past trauma. This is even harder because your nervous system has learned to deal with everything as a threat. Our bodies are really good at navigating short-term threats. They're really good at that. But they were not built for surviving long-term threats like the pandemic or war, job and life stress. And all of that stress is what eventually leads to ill-being. Some of the effects of chronic stress are seen here. So I think some of the most well talked about is heart disease. So people can have high blood pressure, stroke, elevated cholesterol. There's also interesting research that shows that your brain starts to remodel when you're chronically stressed. So the prefrontal cortex, which is the first thing that's mentioned, is really the front of your brain. That's the thinking part of your brain. It's the part that's allowing me to sit here and speak and try to toggle back and forth between the slides, and also, am I missing anything in the chat? That's the conscious mind. So you lose volume in that part. And the amygdala and the hypothalamus, which are things that amygdala is the fear center. With chronic stress, the fear center in your brain actually gets bigger. You lose volume loss in the hypothalamus. That's the thing that lets you turn down the volume. And so you get into this activated cycle of your brain being wired for you to detect threats and not wired to detect other things, which is why over time, this process builds up. That's really the reason that you can't just get out of this with one stress relief technique, is that this happens over time. And so the important message for you is to think about the things that you can control. And really, the only things that we have really within the locus of our control are ourselves, our goals, our actions, our thoughts, attitude, and effort. And that's why I started to think about designing this active stress management pathway, is because I wanted to figure out a way for myself when I was in burnout, which is makes you feel like you don't have any agency. What is it that I can actually control? And fortunately, I found this book that came into my life at the perfect time. It's called Burnout, and it was written by Amelia and Emily Nagoski. And their definition of wellness is that it's not a state of being, it's a state of action. So it's about choosing activities, choices, having a lifestyle that leads to your holistic health. And it's not about a perfect destination where everything is great all of the time. Wellness is really, how do I have the ability to do stuff? And this is, again, the definition from the Duke Center for Wellbeing. I love this definition. How do I have the ability to choose, have ownership and agency? How can I take action so that I have the ability to do stuff? And honestly, the other thing I had to start doing is thinking about stress and thinking about my own mindset about it. One of the cultural messages about stress is that stress is bad. Most people talk about stress and say, I'm so stressed out, I have so much stress, and it's a negative depiction of stress. I think what we forget about is that we also need stress in order to do things in our lives. There is a positive form of stress that allows us to rise to the occasion. It's the thing that allows people to run marathons. It's what allowed me to get out there and start public speaking when I thought that I was so nervous I couldn't possibly do it. I had to say, oh, actually, the pathway of stress or the feeling of stressed out really is something that is the same as the feelings of excitement. It's a fast heart rate. It's maybe breathing a little bit shallower. It's your body getting ready to do something. And so now I've been able to flip my mindset that when I feel fast heart rate, feel a little nauseous, feel like I might be a little bit jittery because I have all the stress hormones going around, my brain says, oh, excited. And honestly, I've been doing this for 2.5 years now. Every time I go to talk, my body feels those feelings. From the time that I was a child, I used to interpret those as, oh no, I'm stressed out. What's wrong with me? Performance anxiety. I'm going to fail. And often I did make a mistake. Now I feel those things and say, oh, excited. Want the outcome to be good. Really hope that somebody gets something out of this. I feel these feelings because I'm excited, not because I'm nervous. And that's completely changed the way that I show up. And that's because I've started to see that type of feeling as challenge stress. So that's a positive form of stress that really results in improvements in my own health, my motivation, and my performance, as opposed to distress, which is the negative form of stress that people usually mean when they say stress. And that's the negative thing that can lead to chronic stress. One of the places that might not come to the top of your mind as having the messaging right about stress is the military and the Navy in particular. In their operational stress control manual for their leaders, and they give them a message. It's called "Stress is part of the job." And frankly, this is how I train people that come to do my job as well. It's part of the job. It can be a really good part of the job because it activates me to show up and do my job in the best way possible. And there can be negative stresses and trauma, grief, and real other things that happen at my job. And our job as individuals is to think about how we might address our own stress. But certainly for me as a leader, I know it's my job to help think about how other people are experiencing their stress on the team. And this is the newest adaptation of the Navy model, and it talks about that success requires some stress. If you look over on the left-hand side, where in the blue color, where it says calm, that's actually where you're underperforming. So you don't have enough activation, you don't have enough of those stress chemicals in your body in order to get you to the place of optimal performance, which is in the middle, where it says eustress. That eustress is just a type, it's another word of saying challenge stress. So at this place in the middle in the green, you're really experiencing optimal performance. And then certainly as you start to go to the other side, you start to experience the point of concern, you have impaired performance, and really in the red at the bottom is where you have burnout after so much chronic unchecked stress. I think it's amazing now because when I was growing up, we didn't talk about this at all. We just sort of, like drove on and put our heads down. But these are things that they're starting to talk about, not only in the military and healthcare, but also this comes from a manual for people in grades 6 through 12. So these are things that children are learning, which is great because when I got to the point of graduating from my training program, I had no idea what was happening. I had to figure out where is my tipping point. And my tipping point on one day compared to another might be different, related to the conditions that are in my life. And I think it is most helpful to start thinking about stress as a continuum. So from a green perspective, this is really where you're ready and rise to the occasion. Yellow is maybe you're reacting, you've had a temporary short-term stress. And as you go from yellow to red, that implies more chronic and more severe levels of distress. the practices that we're going to talk about for active stress management can be really helpful in the yellow and sometimes in the orange. For me, when I was experiencing depression, I was in the red, and these practices were helpful, but I also needed to be seeking professional support. And so that's the one little caveat I always give before we dig into that is that it's great to have these practices. It's great to have these tools. And also there might be times in our lives where we need help from other people, and there is nothing wrong with that. So that's the other part of this message. As we learn to figure out where we're at on this continuum, it can be really helpful to think of, here's where I'm at. Here's a resource I might need in that place. I also like to put a caveat that just because I talk about well-being, it doesn't mean I'm perfect at it. I'm not like rocking well-being all the time. So this is a well-being index. It is the tool that my organization chooses to use to monitor physician, nurse, and some other discipline well-being. It can be really helpful to see where I'm going over time. But you'll notice that in July of 2023, it was the only time I've had excellent well-being. And I always like to tell this story and put this here because the reason I had excellent well-being on July 5th of 2023 is the month before I worked 3 shifts in the ICU. And I always joke with healthcare people that that doesn't mean that I shouldn't be taking care of patients. It means that the taking care of patients part of my job is really stressful. And that during the rest of the time, like say, for example, December 14th of 2022, when we had the most patients that I was ever taking care of in the history of the hospital I work at, I had low well-being. And so this really is that definition in action. You know, wellness is not a state of being, it's a state of action. It's how can I move in December up my quality of life? So there were points in December of 2022 where I was highly dissatisfied, which isn't even on this scale. Highly dissatisfied with my work quality of life because I was here all the time. I was working extra. I felt like I wasn't seeing my family, and it wasn't great. So I thought, how can I get from highly dissatisfied to dissatisfied? Not how can I go from the bottom to the top in one leap, but how can I go one rung up? And in those times when I'm satisfied or highly satisfied, like I was in July of 2023, how can I do some practices to keep me in the satisfied range? Is there anything that I can do here? And that's what taking control of your life really looks like, is how can I choose things for me in order to get myself to a better spot? And that's where we'll spend the rest of this session, is how can I increase my own satisfaction? And first, how can I decrease my fatigue? That's the biggest question. I don't start with the how can I do the positive things, because most of the questions people ask me is, oh my gosh, how can I be less exhausted? And the answer to that is active stress management. That's really you actively choosing some of these practices that we'll talk about to implement in your own life. And you don't have to do them perfectly, but you do have to try them on and see what works for you. And this will not be a one size fits all type of thing. The other not so great news that I have for you is that the things that we are sold as self-care, so like a spa experience, a bubble bath, yoga, meditation, these by themselves are not stress relief activities. The reason for that is that we use a lot of these activities as escapes from our stress. We think, oh, if I go on a trip with my family, and I say trip now because I have a toddler and it's not a vacation when we try to get on an airplane together. Sometimes it's stressful, but it is fun also. But when I take a trip with my family and we go somewhere and I decide to go to the spa and get a massage, 2 things could happen. One of them could be, oh my gosh, I'm so stressed out. I'm going to go to the spa and get a massage, and it's going to be wonderful, and I'm going to relax, and it'll be great. But the thing that can happen is that you lay down on the massage table, and all of a sudden your brain has all of this empty, quiet space because you're not doing anything anymore. And it says, okay, I have to get the kids to this place, and then we have dinner reservations, so I'll have to get dressed, and I'll have to do, and it just goes on and on, creating a story so that the time that you're on the massage table, is not relaxing. It's you continuing to do the cycle of planning inside your own head, and you come back into your life the same amount of stressed out, or sometimes even more, because your brain has also activated multiple stress cycles during the massage. The other way to do the massage is to say, oh, my body is sore. I've been doing a lot of things. This will be a way for me to really tap into things and have some recovery and really to approach it in that way. And it doesn't mean that you don't have some degree of thoughts during the massage, but it might mean that you're actually present in the moment during portions of the massage, understanding what the massage is doing for you. And it's not an escape for you, but really an intentional practice. And that's how active stress management and active caring for ourselves can look different than the escapism that the wellness industrial complex is trying to sell us. And I really like this tool, which is the CSERT model. It came out of clinician experience, so trauma therapists. It came out of one of their disciplines and really has 5 different portions, which we don't have time enough to talk about today. But at the middle of all of these 5 disciplines is conscious oversight, meaning that in this model, just like we're talking about with that active stress management, we can use our brains and the information that we're getting from ourselves to choose what works for us. The ways that we'll talk about doing that today is experiential engagement and parasympathetic recovery. And you'll remember that that parasympathetic nervous system is really the way that we dial the volume down on our stress response and allow us to get some rest. So we'll start with experiential engagement, because as a person who went into a highly intense field, feeling my feelings was not something I learned going through school. It's not something a lot of people I work with learned. And it's certainly one of the most challenging things for me. So I like to start here. Suppressing our emotions can really be beneficial in the short term. It can be helpful in my job when I need to do things that my brain doesn't have time to process my own emotions, but it's not helpful long term. Long-term suppression of emotions can lead to burnout. And what we know from research is that it also leads in combat veterans and in other people to PTSD and other forms of complex trauma. So my message is that emotions are not noise to tune out. They're actually data that are sending us important signals. And the really amazing thing, to nerd out for a second on the brain, our nervous systems are amazing. They really are processing a lot of information at one time. But our conscious minds are much worse at processing than our unconscious minds. So it's estimated that your conscious mind is processing about 60 bits per second, which is pretty great. But your unconscious nervous system is processing 11 million bits of information per second. So your unconscious mind is taking in your entire surroundings right now. You don't even have an idea that it's doing that. And there's a gatekeeper that lives in your brain that decides what information can go from unconscious to conscious. And the most likely thing to get in are the things that the gatekeeper or the bouncer of your mind, the things it determines as threats, because that's what our wiring is there to do. It's really our stress response and our threat response that has kept the species alive. And so those are the things most likely to get into your brain. And so as your body tries to decode these and as your mind tries to decode them, you go through this 8th sense, they call it, of interoception. And that's really just you becoming aware of the signals from inside your body. So like I was talking about earlier with my public speaking analogy, for me, it took feeling, okay, heart is beating fast, breathing is a little shallow, stomach feels a little tight, a little bit jittery. My body felt those things. It knows those things. And what my brain had learned, because I had this pattern of saying, I'm not a public speaker or I have performance anxiety, is it made sense of that to say, oh, you have these physical sensations. That means this. The reason your conscious mind does that is because it's easier for it to have shortcuts. But the thing that you can train it is actually not everything that we're feeling that has that pattern is threat. Maybe it means something else. And so you can start to teach yourself, and it can be really helpful to do this with a therapist or another helping professional, though you can do it by yourself, to say, oh, I'm feeling these things in my body. That doesn't always mean I'm under attack. This also can be helpful as a way to tame your reactive emotions. So you might have a stressful interaction with somebody. And so the one thing that you can do is set an intention that you're going to experience those intense feelings and then become aware of what you're feeling. So first you notice it. What am I feeling right now? You might see where it feels in your body, you might mindfully observe it. Then you might name it, okay, feeling frustrated. Then you have to actually feel it. So you've noticed already. Then you have to feel it and allow and accept it. Then you can unpack it once you've finally allowed it. You don't have to judge it for being there. It doesn't mean anything about you. You don't have to let the fiction writer in your head write a story about what the emotion means about you. But you can actually ask, what is this emotion saying to me? And then maybe it's not saying anything. Or maybe what it's saying is, I have an unmet need, or a boundary has been crossed, or I feel frustrated about whatever and I need to take action. And so you can breathe and ground yourself into that and then move in the most productive way rather than what I used to do, which is feel the emotion and immediately react. And I think if you create that pause, that space between the stimulus and the response, we can have a lot more productive reactions. We don't have to react. We can be in charge of our own actions. And that can lead to a lot less stress over time. Sometimes through this process, we also learn that we don't have to react. We can let those things come and go and that they can pass through us. And that's really how we allow the stress to dissipate, is we don't always have to be reacting all the time. So we're going to take just a few seconds to practice this. So you can sit wherever you're sitting right now. You can feel the weight of gravity on your body and feel the points of contact with whatever you're coming into contact with, whether that's a chair, the floor, the ground. And just think of a recent situation that created mild to moderate frustration for you. So don't think of the most stressful thing. Think of something that was like a little bit annoying. And as you sit there, feeling the points of contact, thinking about that situation, just notice what bodily sensations arise for you. Like, where is it in your actual body that you feel that feeling? Some people feel this in their chest. Some people feel it in their jaw, in their stomach. Some people feel like their whole body is tight and they're like gripping. See if you can allow those things just to be there without trying to push them away, without judging yourself. For me, a lot of times I make a story about what it means, or I don't like the feelings that I'm feeling and I try to shove them down, or really relax my jaw to try to get rid of it. And I think that's the thing that we can get better at, is how can we just be with it, not telling a story about it, and see how it really changes over time. That tightness might be there for a second, but then it kind of goes away. Sometimes if you feel anger, there's also sadness or some other lower emotion under it. And the reason there's a picture of a plant and a plant stand on this is that the author Maggie Smith, who's a poet and has written some other essays now, talks about her feeling like her head was a plant. So her brain was a plant and the whole body was a plant stand. And I think what I've had to learn, and not everybody has to learn, is that the two things are connected. The plant and the plant stand, they're one unit. And getting them to talk to each other can be really challenging. I have been doing this for 7 years now, reconnecting my brain to my body. And I get better and better at it the more I practice. And the way that I practice is through meditation, which I promised you would come up. And I really like the 10% Happier app and podcast. I like it because it has names of meditations like this, a meditation for when things suck. And as a sarcastic person, that really speaks to me. Some people don't like this language, or they choose a different app, or they choose not to meditate. And I know that a lot of people choose not to meditate because it's kind of like the thing that happens at the spa when you're getting a massage, is a lot of people sit down with the expectation that they're going to meditate. Their brain's going to be calm. They have to silence all of the things. And what happens when you sit down to meditate is that your brain goes haywire. And it wants to tell you a lot of stories. It wants to make you believe things. All of your own internal programming is there for you to observe. And what you start to do over time is not quiet those things, but really to have a different relationship to them. And I find that really helpful, is that I can have thoughts now, not just when I'm meditating. And I think meditation, I've heard meditation teachers say that meditation is not to make you better meditator, it's the thing that makes you better at life. Is I now can have those thoughts in regular life when I'm stressed out, either about myself or other people, and I don't have to take them that seriously. It's like, oh, okay, that was a judgment. Like, we'll just move on, rather than having to make a whole story about it. So I've found this incredibly beneficial. I know others have as well. So this would be my one recommendation, to try meditating. And if it's not for you sitting there, some people meditate while walking. Some people get in the same sort of flow state when they're doing other activities. And so, try on things that work for you. The next place we'll go is the parasympathetic recovery that I talked about, which is turning down the volume on your stress response. And that really can be done in the moment. So you might notice that you're starting to get revved up, and in the moment you can actively choose something that lets you dial down. Or it can be done afterwards in order for you to move forward more mindfully. And this system is really just a way to let your body rest and recover. And the coolest thing I've learned is that you can rest within your day. It doesn't have to be done after your workday. And so this is something that I've chosen to build into my life. How can I build rest into my life in order to replenish myself, so that by the time I get home, I don't need an escape from my life or to scroll on my phone for 3 hours. So sometimes I do actively choose to watch funny videos. I think that the more that we can try to create space for ourselves within what we're doing, and create practices that don't add more time, they don't take more time away from us, they really give us energy back, that can let us live more happy and fulfilled lives. One of the books I recommend, or listening to her TED Talk if you don't have the time to read, talks about the 7 types of rest that we need. And they're all here: sensory, emotional, physical, mental, creative, spiritual, and social. There's all sorts of different types of rest that we need as human beings. And this was from a physician, Dr. Sandra Dalton Smith, who was noticing in herself and her patients that they were trying all these traditional self-care practices and they were still feeling exhausted. And the reason is that they were trying to replenish the wrong way. They were trying to mentally work themselves into a place of being better, or to really think through how they were going to recover. And what they needed was a different outlet. Maybe they needed to be creative. They needed to have a place where their brain didn't have to work anymore. Maybe they needed a physical break and needed to be doing some movement. Maybe they needed an emotional break, which we'll talk about in a little while. How do you connect with people? And how do you really be seen, so that you're not suppressing all those emotions, but how do you express those in a way where you can get them out and let them move through you? One of the other ways for us to rest and do parasympathetic activity is through breathing practices. This is one of the most simple ones I've seen. It started in a family medicine doctor office, and there's a study looking at practitioners in that office showing that just this practice of 2 feet, 1 breath, so feeling your feet either on the ground or wherever your point of contact is, a chair, the ground, feeling your feet and taking your breath. I've heard this also described as just feel the effects of gravity on your body. So where is the gravity affecting you? How is it playing on your body? And then taking 1 mindful breath where you really breathe in, you expand your diaphragm. You don't breathe from up here in your chest, you really breathe lower in your body. And people do this in physicians' offices or in the hospital, either before they go into rooms or when they're hand sanitizing. I've seen other people do it before making a response. So if you feel nervous system activated in an emotion, you can really do this. And the whole practice takes less than 15 seconds just to get one good breath in. And it can be really restorative to allow you to move forward with less stress in the moment. The other thing for breathing that I really like is called box breathing. And that is really where you inhale for some amount of time, hold, exhale, hold. And so each one is 1 to 1. Some people do this in a 4-second count. Other people do it in a 2-second count. If you're a willing participant, you don't have to do this, but if you're able to right now, if you can just take a 1 breath, let it out. We're going to do 1 round of box breathing together. I will caveat this by saying that one time I taught some of the trainees how to do this, and this actually made someone feel more stressed because she was worried she wasn't breathing correctly, which was a different conversation for a different day. But you don't have to judge yourself about how you're breathing. If this practice is not for you, that's fine. But I would say maybe give it a try. So we're going to breathe in, and I'll count you. Go 1, 2, in. 1, 2, hold. Exhale. 1, 2. Hold. 1, 2. And if you do this for a couple of rounds, somewhere between 2 to 4 second cycles, what that's doing in your body is the process of holding and the process of exhaling. They're triggering the nerve that controls the parasympathetic nervous system. It's called the vagus nerve. Anything where you breathe out for longer than you're breathing in activates that nerve, and it really produces a state of calm. And that's one of those things where if you see someone, or if you've ever felt better after a sigh, where you go, ah. As you're pushing the air out, that is activating a different part of your nervous system, the relaxed part. And that's how you can activate yourself to rest within your day. And that practice won't make all of the other stressors go away, but it will sometimes allow you to choose the next thing in a more regulated state than you otherwise would. Other things to do when you're stressed, you can laugh. Sometimes you can do that by watching a funny video like I do. You can also have positive social interaction. And I always make sure to say positive social interaction because some of us can get stuck in that cycle of talking to our coworkers about the stressful parts of work and actually notice afterwards that we feel more stressed out or worse than we did when we entered the conversation because we weren't really serving the need that we had, which was let some of the stress out. It was more like getting stuck in the cycle. And so starting to take notice of who is more likely to do that, what situations are likely to drain energy from us will let us choose more mindfully. We can also, as I said, do some breathing exercises, which could be box breathing, 2 feet, 1 breath. Also could just be to inhale for 3 seconds and then exhale for 6. Anything that has a longer exhale than an inhale can do this parasympathetic engagement. And then certainly moving your body, and this doesn't have to be vigorous exercise, so that is incredibly helpful. That can be just moving around, getting up at your desk, kind of walking around or moving your body, however your body moves around. That can be helpful. And then I always like to say a big cry can be really helpful. I, as I've mentioned, work in a really stressful, also sometimes very sad environment. And crying is not something that was always allowed in medicine, but certainly in pediatrics, it's more allowed than in other places. And I think it can be really helpful. A lot of people have had that positive emotion that comes after you've cried, and that's because it really signals to your body that it's safe. So I have a playlist here that's called Songs to Cry To. One of my colleagues likes to joke that I make other people cry, and apparently now 52 other people follow my playlist and they like me to make them cry or they like to cry. And this is really because sometimes things are just sad or they're just hard. and intentionally being able to get some of that out and express those feelings in a healthier way than suppressing them. That's why I made this playlist. Not everyone needs it, but it's here for you if you do. Here are some go-to things. So you can take a micro break, breathe, stretch, pray, if that lands with you. And then also drinking water I put on here because there's some research that shows that the process of drinking cold water, so having ice water, really can activate your parasympathetic nervous system just biochemically by making it cold inside of you. So that can be a nice way to sort of cool down. And then some of these other things to take a little bit more time. The reason I give you this go-to list is really to think about the things within your day that you can do for rest and recovery that don't add more time to what you're already doing. And as you're doing this, just think about what gives you energy. So what charges your battery, what feels like rest, and then what feels like draining or what doesn't appeal to you. You know, some of these things are for some people, they're not for other people. And that's really where you have to try it on and just be willing to, what my coach one time said, you know, fail fast through these things. If they don't work for you, they don't work for you. And maybe they'll work later in your life. If they don't work now, just try something else. And that's really where the stress continuum model can be helpful. So you're thinking about, okay, if I'm ready, what does that look like? If I'm reacting, what's a practice I could do to help me? If I'm injured, what is a practice that could help me? And then, as I mentioned, if you're in that red state, how can I get help? Who is helpful to me? How can I get back to a place that's more regulated and less stress? And in order to do that, I created this stress action plan. There we go. And that is really a way to think about what you're like in these zones. This QR code will take you to the document that's in a Google Drive. Feel free to download it, utilize it, and it helps you think about what things might be helpful for you. Another way to do that is through what I call the check your pulse practice. I work in an ICU, so we talk about pulse checks a lot, but this is really thinking at the beginning of the day, where are you? This is the practice that I try to do every day, especially when I'm working in the hospital, to think about where am I mentally and physically? You know, did I sleep well? What's my stress level now, knowing that it's going to fluctuate throughout the day? I also try to think in the morning, what is going right now? And this morning, it was the fact that my 2.5-year-old slept through the whole night. She hasn't done in a while. So that was going right. And it meant that I got to drink my coffee on my own by myself. And then set 3 daily goals, which is something that I do that don't have to be complicated. It can be connect with someone. It could be eat my lunch without doing my notes, because a lot of documentation happens in the electronic record while I'm at my job. And sometimes I just want to eat my lunch without doing that. So these don't have to be complicated goals. They can be really helpful. Oh, good. Perfect. Maddie says she's going to link the QR code documents in the follow-up email. Wonderful. And certainly I'm willing to share the slides too if people are interested. That way you have all the resources at your disposal. The way that I like to do this when I'm working, so this is an ideal day. This is by no means a perfect day. I don't do this every day, but if I was having my way, I would, before going to work, do the check my pulse practice. I would meditate and I would drink my coffee, because I'm not me if I haven't had my coffee. On the way to the hospital, I would try to do something that gets me in the right headspace. For me, that's often a podcast, but really sometimes it's something else. For one of my coworkers who has 2 children under the age of 3, she likes to drive to work in silence because she doesn't get silence anywhere else in her day. That's really nice for her. And then one of the training doctors who I'm teaching, she likes to listen to really loud hip hop music on the way to work. And she said she'd never thought about it, and neither had my other colleague, that was really getting them in the right headspace. And this is where having some knowledge and having understanding of what we're doing and why we're doing it, like, what is it about this thing that I'm doing that actually helps me? That's where we start to take back the control of what we're doing. This process of being so regimented doesn't work for everybody. Some people just like to feel that things are good for them. And that can be where you can lean into the things that feel good and try to lean out of the things that don't feel as good. I also made another stress management daily blueprint that you can get here at this QR code. And that's really how you can start to think about not only what are the practices, but where might you do some of these active stress management things in your day in order to get some of that rest, and really allow you to pause, breathe, ponder what will feel good, choose one of them, and then to actually do it. Like, how can you do those things in your day, in the moment, so that it's not just another thing on your to-do list, but it's really helping serve you to get to the next part of your day. Here's some of the things that I do. The picture on the right is an underground tunnel between one building and another in our hospital system. And sometimes I'm down there with my AirPods in, just listening to one of my playlists. Not always songs to cry to, but I have a few other ones. And if I'm walking around down in that loop in that area and people see me, they know probably now is not the time, like Jill is working something out. This picture in the upper left-hand corner is a lake that's by my house. So sometimes I go there after work or on the way to work in order to take a few breaths outside. We have these massage chairs in our hospital that not a lot of people use, but sometimes I do because my job is physically difficult, and sometimes these massage chairs make you feel better. And then the cutting board with the produce on it really is a joke now that my colleagues have, but I started bringing food to work that I really like to eat. This was food out of my garden. And last year I was having way better salads than a lot of my colleagues because I decided that I was going to follow this advice I heard from somebody else, which was to eat my lunch with a knife and fork, meaning I was going to have utensils in my hands. I was going to do something that felt good for me. And I was going to do it because I wanted to do it and because I didn't want to be working on my notes while I was having my lunch. Like, I decided I was going to take 15 minutes, sometimes less than that, depends on the day, in order to do these things so that I could have some me time within my day. Everybody wants a massage chair. I think you guys should get one. So as we move into the final part, now we're going to talk about the positive thing. So how do we increase that satisfaction? And now that we've figured out some ways to breathe. And this, again, this is not toxic positivity. It's not positive vibes only. There was previously a sign near my old office that said, like, good vibes only. I'm very much not a good vibes only person. I'm like all the vibes. Because life is about both things. So really, now that we've addressed those things that are hard, that are a little bit more difficult, how do we boost up some of the positive stuff? And one of the books that I like for that is called Everyday Vitality. It's by another psychiatrist, Samantha Boardman. And these are her 3 C's. So she talks about connecting, contributing, and challenging. So how do you connect with yourself and other people or the world more broadly? How do you contribute to something that's not just about yourself? And how do you challenge yourself to use your strengths in a meaningful way, knowing that you all have strengths and we don't talk about them all the time, especially in medicine where I am. It's such a deficit based. You need to make these improvements and be better. We forget a lot of times that we already have these really cool parts about us that we can build up and use in a meaningful way to connect with other people and contribute. Most people know these opportunities for connection intuitively. It's talking, spending time, either with family, friends, or with your pets, or both, socializing, or taking time away from people. I'm an introvert. People get that wrong a lot. They think I'm an extrovert. I have to extrovert a lot at my job, and I really like people, but I also need time away to connect with myself. And so knowing about that is really important so that I can have those moments built into my day when possible. Another strategy to decrease or increase our connection is to decrease our emotional labor. So in this picture here, you see what a lot of us do. It's this broken light. Someone asks, "Oh, hey, how are you?" And our answer is like, "Oh, fine, holding on." Or I don't know how it is there, but certainly up here in Michigan, a lot of people are like, "Living the dream." Just live in the dream. And if anyone in Michigan tells you live in the dream, they're red on the stress. They need intervention, just like this light needs an intervention. So one of the ways that we can increase our connection with other people is to really be truthful about what's going on. And this is not all the time. Emotional labor is really when we try to project something that's not going there. So we try to control our feelings to fulfill the goals and expectations of the interaction. So this might be at work or also with our partners or our children. It might mean that we only express positive feelings and we're really just fake good vibes only. Or it might mean that we show emotion that we don't really feel, which is sometimes what I hear from people in healthcare. Like they don't feel feelings and they feel guilty about it. Or they hide the emotions they really do feel. Or they create fake emotions. And this is what I see a lot of times with what we call surface acting. It's where you fake or pretend to have some emotion. So maybe you're really mad inside, like that thing that we thought about earlier, that frustration has happened. And on the outside, we put on this voice of everything's great. And really culturally, as a woman, this is something for me that people expect of me. People will come in, be actively biased, and the expectation is that culturally you'll just put on a smile. And in some cases, we have to do that. I can't be reacting all the time. I can't be leading from an unhelpful reactive space. But certainly, I need people that I can let my guard down with. And that's why I'm happy to have so many colleagues and a partner who I can do this with that allows me to take off the mask and really get some of that emotional rest that I alluded to earlier. And this can be really important as a leader too, is when people are coming to you, these things, as someone who didn't think about emotions, sometimes it feels like people want you to fix things, and or you don't know how to react. And so some people say things like, "Oh, you'll be fine," or "Cheer up," or "Everything happens for a reason," which is something I hear people say to parents who've lost children, which I cannot imagine saying it to anybody. But sometimes we say things when we don't know what to say. And so really, I'm just here to tell you that if someone is like dropping their guard with you, you don't have to fix them. You should just hold space for them. And holding space just looks like, oh, it's really understandable that you feel that way. Is there something I can do to support you? Or, what resources do you need to help get through this? And sometimes people really appreciate that more than they're not looking to you to fix everything. And if people are looking to me to fix everything and I don't have the answers, I refer liberally to other people who might, like therapists and counselors and some of our employee assistance programs inside of our organizations. One of the other ways to build connection that I think is really cool is called the noticing nature practice. So this came from a study that was published in 2016. Because I think the teaching or the understanding of a lot of people is I have to spend more time in nature. I need to get out there. I've got to be in it or to like escape to the woods, which is a lot of times what I joke that I'm going to do when I eventually leave healthcare is just go live on a compound with all of the other female doctors. But this noticing nature practice really cues us into thinking about how can I notice everyday nature? And so as a commitment to this, these both are pictures of clouds and pictures of little trucks by a dirt mound that I took this morning when I went out and noticed nature when I was letting my dog outside as I was drinking my coffee. So in this practice, we are encouraged to, for 2 weeks or for whatever period of time, notice the nature that's around us every day. So it might just be one plant. It might be the clouds in the sky. It might be the trees, especially now that winter seems like it's slowly loosening its hold in the Midwest. Whatever it is, notice it, and then notice the things that it makes you feel. And in this study where they did this with undergraduate students for 2 weeks, the people that were instructed to notice nature and how it made them feel, if they did that for 2 weeks, they had more connection to themselves and to other people than they did before. And they had more positive emotions. And I thought this was really cool because it's not something that we have to do and make more time. It's something just like the what can you do on your way to work that puts you in the right headspace. This noticing nature practice can be part of our daily lives to make us think as we walk from one place to the next or move from one place to the next. What's around me? How does that? Wow, look at that up there. And I love looking at clouds. It's still the part of me that's like a little kid. So I think these are amazing things that we can incorporate into our days that actually, with time, do have this experience of decreasing our stress and connecting ourselves and others. The other thing, the other C's, so not just connection, but contribution and challenge. I've gotten this through writing a newsletter. So it's called Humans Leading. It's on Substack, which is a newsletter platform. It's been around for several years now, but I decided to start writing one last year. I'm not a writer in the traditional sense, but I started putting this content out there that's a lot like this that I'm doing right now, and people started resonating with it. And honestly, over the weekend, I got this amazing feedback from someone I did not anticipate sending me this. And I didn't put it here to celebrate myself. I just put it here to remind me that we do things every day that use our strengths, and we do things with a purpose, and that purpose can connect us to other people and really be the thing that we tap into when things are hard and really give us that satisfaction that we're looking for. And what we know is that writing the story of our own work, this is physician data, but I think it's true for everybody. If we spend 20% of our time, so 1/5 of our time, on the most personally meaningful areas of our work, it's protective against burnout because it lets us tap back into that satisfaction. What is the thing that we want to be doing, what lights us up? And that lets us have some of that positive emotion that we're all looking for. So as we wind down, like I've given you a lot of tools, many tools, and they're not, as I mentioned, all for you, but you get to choose. You get to choose which one of these tools that you'd like to use, which one you'd like to try on, and see if it works for you. And again, fail fast. It's one of the only areas in our lives where we get to do that. Fail fast. If the tool doesn't work for you, move on to the next one. And as you're doing it, don't should on yourself. Don't say, I should be doing more of this. I should be doing more of that. Like, just allow trying. Try something on. And this is the final thing. Start with a 1-degree turn. I love this concept. It comes from the work of life coach and author Martha Beck. Really, she talks about 1-degree turns as if you were in an airplane, and every 300 miles, the plane starts turning 1 degree. If you're in the plane, you don't even notice the plane is turning because it's doing it so gradually. But if you are on a long distance trip and you turn that 1 degree every 300 miles, you'll be in some completely different destination than you were when you started out. And I think that's what's true with my life is I didn't get all of these things all at once. I didn't implement all these practices all at once. I started like this little diagram is showing making the 1-degree turn. And the way that you can do that for yourself is how can I get 10 minutes? And if you can't put aside 10 minutes for yourself in a day, I don't know that I can help you. But if you can, and if you commit to it, if you start putting in little 10-minute chunks, it doesn't have to be all together. It can be in 1-minute increments. If you put 10 minutes in your day together, you'll start to feel something different than what you currently feel. If you start doing that now, it will give you energy to add minutes over time, and you'll end up in a completely different place than you are right now. Here are some other resources, which again, I'm happy to share all these slides so that you have them. The only one I didn't really call out by name is Practical Optimism, which just came out this year. It's amazing. It's by another psychiatrist, Dr. Sue Varma. And really, she talks about a lot of these practices and digs deeper into emotional awareness and emotional agility. And then I'll leave you with my contact information. Here's my email. I'm at Life and PICU, the now defunct Twitter, Instagram, and Threads. And then here are links to my Substack and my podcast if anyone's ever interested. And I'm happy to take questions, comments, and I just want to thank you all for here today and for lighting up the chat.
All right, thank you very much. I'm gonna, excuse me, I'm gonna go ahead and stop the recording really quickly.